The conversation of your life, local, relevant, digital, and always on.
America will hear my 2 cents.
Elected to serve iHub radio listeners across the desert cities. He calls it as he sees it.
Quick question.
Now, here's Russ Betts.
Someone answer him now!
Well, good morning to you. The sun comes up, and here we are at the beautiful iHub Studios in downtown Palm Springs, bringing you another edition of the Russ Betts Show. And in case you haven't figured that out, I'm Russ Betts. So, hey, we got a lot to cover today. We're going to get started right away. He was ruled out of order by the chair, and then the city police were called to remove him from the meeting. The mayor and the council member got into a little bit of a disagreement on the dais, and the mayor said, you know what, that's it, you're out of here. He called the police came in, and he was escorted out. And I had a conversation with Councilman Sammy Casados of Pasadena, Texas. I was curious, so I reached out and contacted him. I'm a council member in the city of Desert Hot Springs, and I wanted to see what was going on, so I called a council member in the city of Pasadena, Texas. And he said that, they tried it again at another meeting, but he refused to leave. And the mayor backed down a little bit. His name is Jim Wagner's the mayor out there. And he thinks it's because probably the state attorney general had contacted them and said, I don't think you can do that. I mean, it raises a really good question as how a mayor removes a sitting duly elected public official from a meeting. That's a real good question. It's one we're going to get into. That's what we do here on the Russ Betts Show. And it starts with, let's start with Penal Code 403, disturbing a public meeting. Every person who, without authority of law, willfully disturbs or breaks up any assembly or meeting that is not unlawful in its character is guilty of a misdemeanor. And the typical example is a group of protesters who go and march and demonstrate in front of City Hall and are so loud and boisterous or otherwise disruptive that the city council meeting is not able to proceed. Now, if you're convicted, you could face up to 6 months in county jail. That would give you a permanent criminal record. But courts have ruled over and over that police and prosecutors have very limited powers to prosecute you for disturbing a meeting. And the reason for that is it runs up against your basic constitutional rights. Now, all of that I just discussed regards citizens attending a meeting. It does not apply to an elected member of a city council, a board of supervisors, or a water district board. There's a much higher bar that needs to be met. So where somebody disrupting a council meeting through chanting or protesting can be removed from the meeting, a council member or a board member disagreeing with the mayor on issues or points, and to the point where it even seems disruptive, can't be removed. So let's turn to Pasadena, Texas, where a council member was first ruled out of order by the mayor and then removed from the meeting by the police. They were, you can see, it's all the videos online. You can go watch it. Basically, Councilmember Sammy Casados was disagreeing with the mayor over what they were talking about, salary and benefits, and I guess it got particularly onerous for the mayor when Casados suggested that the mayor's personal secretary should either not, he shouldn't have one, or the amount should be resigned, and it kind of went to, well, I guess Jim Wagner got upset at that, so he said, that's it, you're out of here. This all happened back in September. Since then, he made a call to the state attorney general, and who in turn called officials and the mayor of Pasadena, Texas, and apparently they've rethought their actions. I mean, how a mayor removes a sitting, duly elected public official from a meeting is a real good question. And I had a conversation with our city manager, Chuck Maynard, who, in addition to serving as our city manager, also spent time as a chief of police in another city. And he said he was confronted with a situation at a city council meeting where he sat in on the meeting as the police chief, and he said a council member had gone to a real extreme length to disturb the meeting, to the point of placing himself in front of the dais on his knees and doing a mock bowing down to what he was calling the exalted mayor. I mean, it was a total breakdown of the meeting. And so the mayor says, remove him, get him out of this meeting. And as Maynard explained it to me, he told the mayor, he says, I can't remove him, he hasn't done anything illegal. In other words, there was not a crime that had been committed for which the police could arrest and remove him from a public meeting. He's a duly elected official. Now, Maynard explained there is a penal code section in which the police can legally remove a sitting elected official at a meeting, but only if it involves physical violence or a credible threat of physical violence. None of that took place in Pasadena, Texas. You can see that in the video. Go watch it yourself. And none of that happened at the meeting in Mission Springs Water District, where MSWD Board Chairman Randy Duncan announced during the meeting that he had called the police to remove board member Steve Grasha.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. We've got the police on the way. They're going to handle this disruption.
Okay, good.
Now, my conversation with our city manager was to find out why our city was acting as a sergeant-at-arms for Mission Springs Water District. And our city's looking into that. Stay tuned. There was no violence or threat of violence at the December board meeting MSWD. The recording to 911 dispatch shows that. I mean, the call went out as, we have a board member disturbing the meeting. Never once in that call was there any mention of violence. But what did come up, if you listen to the meeting, and I have twice, it's about a 2-hour-long meeting. It's arguing, it's disagreement, it's a complete and total lack of parliamentary procedure by the MSD chairman of the meeting. He just totally lost control of this meeting. And when you're the chairman of a board or a mayor, it's your job to keep the order, and that didn't happen. But somebody needs to get a copy of Robert's Rules of Order and study it. And I recommend Webster's 11th edition as the most detailed and serious read. Because if you don't know how to run a meeting, it's incumbent upon you to learn. Robert's Rules of Order is there for you. It's a great guide. It's real easy. I tell you, I got familiar with Robert's Rules of Order when I sat on a community council back in Pennsylvania. And we had a board member, Bill Brown, and who just insisted every meeting, hey, we're not following Robert's Rules of Order. We need to follow Robert's Rules of Order. So the board president said, you know what? All right, fine. He says, here, Bill's making so much commotion about this. He bought each of us a copy of Robert's Rules of Order, Webster's 11th edition. Said, here, read it and come back to the next meeting having done your homework. Well, we all came back to the meeting with a little snicker on saying, we're going to show Bill, we're going to take this to the level of absurdity following these Robert's Rules of Orders and show him how ridiculous it is for all of us to be doing this. So we get into the meeting, and all of a sudden we look up at each other and we say, wait a minute. Wow, this really does work. Amazing how smooth the meeting runs when everybody knows how to do it and what their role is. And the chair knew how to handle commotion. The chair knew how to set time and give members of the board time. And, hi, it's your turn to speak. I'm sorry, sir, I don't care if you disagree with you, you're interrupting him. Save your thought. It's not your time right now. The mayor or the chair have tools to control a meeting, but removing a member is not one of them. It's our system of government. Absent the exception of violence or threat of violence, it's the voters and the voters alone that decide if a member is no longer to attend a meeting. And even there's a procedure for that. It's called recall. Your local city clerk or the register of voters can fill you in on those details because there's a guide for that also. But absent a recall, having someone thrown out of a meeting has happened in Pasadena, Texas, and the December meeting of the Mission Springs Water District is not within the domain of the chair of the meeting. It's not within the mayor's purview. So what is? Is the mayor or chairman left with no tools that if a member of a disruptive or asking too many questions, or even if the chair finds the questions disagreeable or horrible or terrible, it's a terrible thing to say, whatever you want to characterize it at, absence violence, does the mayor have any tool to bring order to the meeting? And yes, the mayor has tools. And they're all spelled out in Robert's Rules of Order. It's like magic. Roberts went around all these meetings and put all this in place because he saw this commotion going on and said, hey, we need a set order. Well, do your homework. I swear it should be mandatory of all elected officials to read and pass a test on basic parliamentary procedures outlined very clearly in Robert's Rules of Order.